it's Julie Jara from Australia here. I'm in the bush in the National Park in Australia. I'm not where there's any current bushfires at the moment. This is actually an area right near where I live that was burnt out last year, about a year ago, because I wanted to show you something here, and we'll get to that in a moment. I wanted to talk about following your instinct or your inner knowing, your guidance, whatever it is that you call it. There's something where sometimes you don't know why you're doing something, but you just know you need to do it. You have a certainty about it, that that's what you need to do, and that everything will work out. And sometimes you go against the flow, you go against what society, your family or others think, and sometimes you even go against what you think yourself because you just don't know why you're doing it. Now, I've had probably a lot of experiences. One was, before I got involved in Reconnective healing, I had been in a spiritual development program for 20 years. So I had been connecting and learning to trust my intuitive abilities and my inner self, and I had taught that and worked at it for a long time, so I kind of had a lot put together already. When I found Reconnective healing and the reconnection, however, Reconnective healing helped me with a physical and emotional healing, but then when I had the reconnection, it was like the two different worlds that I was very aware I was living in came together. So the physical, material world and the spiritual world, the world of spirit and emotions and knowledge and information, it's like the two joined together. The veil between them became thinner. And I just had that feeling like I was in a constant communication. It brought it to another level, and I think that's important for people to realize that whatever level you're at, there's always more, because I know there's always more for me to learn. So the experience I had was I had taken the training in the reconnection. I had already started to see clients, and I had a pretty good corporate job at the time where I was coordinator of a training company, a industrial relations training company, and the reconnection was coming back to Australia for another seminar, and I just knew that I wanted to promote it. It's like there was something inside me pushing me. It didn't feel like it was me. It was something that I just knew I had to do. And I told everyone about it, and I just kept going. The office wasn't part of it. They weren't really talking to me much because they didn't really know who I was. There was no one saying, Julie, this is a good idea, do it. I was just going, I have to do this. So I did. We got record attendance at that event, and I ended up leaving my job not long after, and I've been doing Reconnective healing full-time ever since then. So the outcome was that it turned out to be something that was good for me, and yet my intellect, my understanding, people around me, there was no information about that. Now the same has happened, I guess, just recently. You know that there have been massive bushfires in Australia, not in the capital cities, in the country areas where we've had drought and bushfires now for it's the third month in some places, and a lot of the land is being destroyed in those areas. A lot of people are losing homes and property. So what I asked was the question, how can I be of service? There are people out in the field helping by building fences, supplying people with goods and items and so on, and I thought, well, I can't do any of that. What can I do? And I got given this project to offer healing, and I thought, well, it's not just me, there's a lot of us, there's a lot of practitioners, so I put it out there as a project. And to be honest, I have no idea how it's going to work out. I have no idea how we're going to find these people, because I have just taken a road trip down to the New South Wales south coast, where there are a lot of fires still burning, and actually they've gotten worse in the last 2 days since I got back. And the people are still in shock. They're still fighting fires. There's still some of them without electricity. So they're not really open to me going up saying, hey, would you like a healing? So I don't know where it's going to end, but the certainty I do have is that I'm doing the right thing, that it's going to end up somehow helping people and being sort of, that's how that worked. That's why I did that. So I know it is going to be something. Now, so even though I'm not so certain of that, what I am certain of is that these disasters that happen are natural, and that they happen all the time. So we had a bushfire here a year ago, and what I wanted to show you here, if you can see, on top is sort of brown, they're the dead trees, and under it is where it's green, it's regenerating. So even though we had that fire, it has regenerated, and the ones we're having at the moment are a lot more intense than these ones back here, however. There's also earthquakes. There was the recent one in Puerto Rico. There was one in Lombok about a year ago that I was heavily involved with, and they're in recovery now. There's also active volcanoes around the world. I don't know if you know, Krakatoa is a very large one that went off in 1883 in Indonesia. It actually formed a new volcano called Anak Krakatoa, which means small Krakatoa, and that went off last year. So these things are happening all over the place, perhaps because we have more media and social media now that we get to hear about them right away. On a more personal level, we also have things happen. We get out of balance. We find we have disease, and it happens to all of us. Going along, and then suddenly you realize you're stressed, or that things aren't behaving the way in your body or in your mind how you want them to. It happens. And I think sometimes these things happen to us to show us that we're out of balance, that we need to make some changes. It's like if you think of your disease as a gift, to say, okay, there's something that's showing me I need to do something about that. I need to change something in my life, and definitely Reconnective healing can create miracles in that area. That's why so many of us are actually, doing this work, that we've seen, so many what we might think of as miracles, so many life changes, so many shifts in consciousness because of it. However, as humans, we really crave certainty in our life, and while we've got these things going off, we've got fires burning, volcanoes, we've got illness, we don't have that certainty. It's sort of, certainty is second in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first are things, what I've really learned, the first is air, oxygen. A few weeks ago I got I inhaled too much of the smoke, and I couldn't breathe properly, and wow, without air it's quite scary. And I've also been involved in a hurricane in Fiji where we didn't have water the next day, and that's happened in the volcano areas as well. What happened in Lombok, my husband is from Lombok, and suddenly I found that I had 300 relatives affected in the volcano area, and the biggest problem they had immediately was they didn't have any water, because the earth has moved, it's contaminated the water supply, and So we asked for help from some people and shipped in water to those people before the government. The government did come in, but they took a couple of weeks. And you know, your need is for water. You can't go too long without water. So on the next, you know, there's other things, food and so on. They're not as important straight away. The next is certainty that we need. We need to have some certainty in our life. And I really feel that the certainty that I have, and that many can have too, is by really understanding that the answers are inside, that you can trust yourself. You can trust what you have when you know yourself. And I think it's Reconnective healing and the reconnection that really brought that to me in a deeper level, that I know that when I get information, of course I discern it. Is it the right information for me? I know to follow it and things work out. I also know that there's always hope. Everything regenerates. I see the bush here. I see miracles in healings and changes. Life might be different. Like, life is going to be very different for people after these bushfires. And the landscape here it looks different than what it did before this fire. So things might be different, but it will come back. And with Reconnective healing, there is that certainty that there's a lesson behind it and everything is going to be okay. Now, I had a little story. I wanted to tell you something that happened while I was out. I've been down the South Coast distributing brochures and talking to people in the emergency evacuation centres that are set up. And there's also one area where people donated apparently 60 semi-trailers of water and food for the people in one area, in Bateman's Bay area. And I went in, and it's being run by the military for the last couple of weeks. And I took these brochures in there, and I spoke to some of the guys in the tents there and asked if they would be able to hand them out. And they were really nice, and they said, yes, we absolutely have people come in that we can't help them and we'd really like to, so we would love to be able to give them some help, and we'll hand out your brochures. And I said, fantastic. And one of the guys then said to me, can I just ask how you found us here? Because it was actually out the back of the town. It wasn't marked. It was only for people who were referred there by the emergency centre, I think. It's the only way you would find it normally. So he said, how did you find us? And I said, well, I drove into town and I didn't yet have the GPS on to find the centre that I was looking for. So I kind of just followed my nose, and I knew the town was to the left, but something said to turn right. So I turned right, went down a laneway, and then there was the gate I drove through, and there were all these army and military all set up with all this water and milk and food. And that's how I found you. So he had the brochures in his hand. He took the brochure and he said, so this stuff works? And I said, yes, it sure does. And that just made my day. I just knew that I was in the right place at the right time doing the right thing.